Caleb Mercer had never missed a sunrise workout. Not in the 15 years since he opened the Forge, Chicago's most elite fitness sanctuary for the powerful and unrelenting. Hidden behind a row of oak-paneled townhouses in Lincoln Park, the gym was more fortress than club, invitation only, discreetly staffed, and laced with the scent of cedar and eucalyptus. Caleb liked it quiet, sterile, untouched, especially before the city woke up. That morning he stepped through the rear entrance in his usual black joggers and zip-up, earbuds tucked into his collar, mind already calculating reps and intervals. He rounded the corner toward the treadmill corridor and froze. Two small shapes moved in the low light. Children, girls, maybe 9 or 10. They were in oversized gray uniforms, sleeves cuffed, gloves swallowing their hands. One held a rag, the other a spray bottle. Together, they scrubbed the elliptical machines with quiet, practiced precision, like they'd done this before. Caleb's breath hitched. He stood in the silence, watching. This was a facility where members paid nearly $10,000 annually to move in air-conditioned serenity, to sweat in private under the guidance of Olympic-tier trainers. And here were two children wiping sweat from polished steel as if they were born to it. He stepped forward, careful not to startle them. "Hey," he said gently, "what are you doing here?" The girl nearest to him, slightly taller, her dark curls pulled back in a crooked ponytail, straightened slowly. Her voice was clear, unshaken. "We're helping our dad. He's sick." Caleb blinked. "Your dad works here?" The smaller one nodded without looking up. "Mr. Alvarez, the night janitor. He collapsed last week. We didn't want him to lose his job." The name hit him like a shot to the ribs. Luis Alvarez, the quiet man who never made eye contact, who cleaned during the overnight shifts and left before sunrise. Caleb hadn't seen him in over a week, hadn't even noticed he was gone. He swallowed hard. "You're his daughters?" "Yes," said the older one. "I'm Mariella. This is Sophia." Their hands were raw. He could see it now, chapped skin at the edges of the gloves. They had been doing this for days. Caleb felt something inside him shift. Not just guilt, recognition. A memory clawed its way up of his own mother, scraping gum from under bar stools while he did homework on the floor beside her in greasy secondhand sneakers. She had died still owing rent. He hadn't cried in years. Not when his company IPO'd. Not when his father drank himself to death. Not even when he signed his first $10 million deal. But now in a $6,000 a month fitness lounge, watching two little girls clean sweat off the floor at 5 a.m., a tear broke loose and slid silently down his face. He wiped it away before they could see. "I need you to stop," he said, his voice firmer than before. "You shouldn't be doing this." Mariella squared her shoulders. "If we don't, we can't pay the rent. Dad has no insurance, and if he loses this job, we don't know what happens next." Caleb didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the front desk, where Janelle, the morning receptionist, was preparing towels. "What the hell is going on?" he asked, low but sharp. Janelle flinched. I saw them yesterday. I didn't know what to do. I didn't tell security. I thought it was just for the day." Caleb didn't respond. He returned to the girls, knelt between them, and said, "You're coming with me now. This is over. Your dad's job is safe." I swear Mariella looked unsure. Sophia looked tired. Caleb escorted them to his private lounge upstairs. They sat awkwardly on a leather couch designed for venture capital meetings. He had Janelle bring them cocoa and bagels. Then he pulled out his phone and made 3 calls. The first to the hospital where Luis Alvarez was admitted. The second to a pediatric counselor he once hired for an employee's child with PTSD. The third to his lawyer. He didn't know what he was building yet, but he knew he couldn't walk away, not again. Caleb stayed with the girls until long after the sun rose and the gym came to life. Trainers arriving, executives in $1,000 sneakers, slipping in for private sessions, playlists humming low through hidden speakers. No one noticed the 2 small figures curled into a corner of the upstairs lounge, wrapped in branded towels still in janitor uniforms. He sat in the leather chair across from them, elbows on his knees, phone in one hand, a legal pad in the other. Caleb Mercer was a man who'd mastered systems, logistics, operations, acquisitions. This, though, was chaos. Children, fear, poverty, illness. things that didn't balance on spreadsheets. He took a deep breath and dialed again. At the hospital, Luis Alvarez was stable but sedated, recovering from a severe infection compounded by exhaustion and untreated diabetes. Caleb asked questions the nurses weren't used to hearing from. Employers. Did he have insurance? Number emergency contacts? None. What would it take to get him into private recovery? Money, came the answer, and someone who gave a damn. Caleb gave both. He looked over at the girls. Sophia had dozed off against her sister's side. Mariella watched him warily, her eyes a mix of suspicion and hope. Caleb didn't smile. He never did, but his voice softened. Do you have anyone else? Family? No, she said. Just us. We moved here 2 years ago. Dad works nights. We don't really talk to neighbors. He nodded slowly. The more she spoke, the clearer it became. These weren't just girls caught in bad luck. They were survivors, stitched together by duty and silence. He stood and crossed the room to his desk. There, beside his unused yoga mat and unopened protein bars, he pulled out a file labeled Emergency Operations. He flipped to a page he never thought he'd need. Temporary housing contacts. All right, he said. We're going to get you somewhere safe. You'll stay with someone I trust, just for a little while. You'll sleep in beds, not couches, and eat breakfast like kids. Mariella's jaw tightened. We're not your problem. Caleb paused. I used to think that too, he said. About myself. He didn't elaborate. He didn't tell her about the basement apartment he grew up in, or the nights he sat on the roof eating stale cereal while his mother scrubbed floors below. He didn't talk about the violence, the evictions, the years of pretending he didn't care. That wasn't her burden. Instead, he stepped into the hallway and called Tilda Rhodes, a former corporate counselor who now ran a private foster placement agency for at-risk children. Tilda had the kind of voice that cut through fear. She answered on the second ring. You trust me, right? Caleb asked without preamble. I'm scared already, she replied. I've got 2 girls. Their dad's in the ICU. No relatives. They've been working his job to keep the rent paid. Silence. Tilda? I'm already getting in the car, she said. By noon, Mariella and Sophia were safely in a warm brownstone in Roscoe Village, curled into soft blankets, greeted by the smell of soup and the gentle warmth of Tilda's voice. Caleb stayed long enough to make sure they relaxed. When he left, Sophia whispered, Thank you. He didn't respond, just nodded, closed the door behind him, and stood on the porch staring out at the cold. He didn't go back to the forge that day. Instead, he walked 5 miles. No earbuds, no phone, no direction. He walked until his muscles burned and the buildings blurred and the past dragged at his heels like a weighted chain. He walked until memory caught up with him. He remembered Chicago in winter. 12 years old, his coat too thin, the snow too deep. He remembered holding his mother's hand after she collapsed in a cleaning closet at the Marriott. He remembered the nurse who asked if anyone could take care of him and his shaking voice saying, I don't know. He remembered the social worker who brought him peanut butter crackers in a waiting room, then vanished from his life like smoke. And he remembered the promise he made on that cold leather bench under a buzzing light. If I ever get out of this, I'm never letting it happen again. But he had let it happen again. He just hadn't seen it. Until now. That night, he sat alone in his penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. It was glass and chrome, full of things no one touched. For the first time in years, he turned on the TV, but not the financial news. He watched an old cartoon instead, one he barely remembered, but recognized in his bones. Somewhere, Mariella and Sophia might be doing the same. He didn't sleep much. The next morning, he called his COO and cleared his schedule. I'm taking a leave of absence, he said. You've got the wheel. For how long? I don't know. Then he opened his laptop and started a new document. Project title, Alvarez Initiative. Purpose, to identify and support vulnerable employees within the Forge Corporation, specifically night staff, contractors, and cleaners. Launch emergency relief fund. Establish on-site childcare. Build trauma response partnerships. Secondary objective, find Luis Alvarez's daughters a permanent home, even if it had to be his. Tilda Rhodes lived in a converted 3-story brick home with flower boxes in the windows and framed crayon drawings on the walls. To Caleb, It felt like stepping into a museum of something lost, warmth without price tags. She met him at the door in slippers, a cardigan thrown over her shoulders, and an expression that mixed maternal concern with professional calculation. "I made them soup," she said. "Sophia asked if she could keep the spoon." Caleb blinked. Tilda led him to the back den, where the girls were nestled into a couch that had clearly hosted 100 other lost children. Sophia slept, curled into a ball with a stuffed animal Tilda had unearthed from a donation box. Mariella was awake, watching cartoons with a distant look. When she saw Caleb, she didn't smile. "You said our dad's okay," she said. "You swear?" "I swear," he answered. She nodded once, then looked back at the TV. It took all the restraint Caleb had to stay quiet. He wanted to explain everything, to promise safety, to promise permanency. But he knew too well how promises sounded when you'd grown up without anyone keeping them. So he sat, just sat, for nearly 2 hours. When Tilda returned with Coco, she paused in the doorway, watching them. "They're not like most kids I take in," she whispered. "Too quiet, too contained." "They've had to be," Caleb said. "And you?" she asked. He didn't answer. The following day, Caleb returned to the forge, not to work out, but to work. He met with HR, operations, and legal. He ordered a full audit of the company's subcontracted staff. Every cleaner, janitor, overnight security, and laundry vendor. If they'd ever touched the forge, he wanted to know who they were, how they were treated, and what protections they lacked. "No more ghosts," he told his COO. "No one invisible." Meanwhile, he was back and forth to the hospital where Luis Alvarez lay unconscious in a monitored ICU. Caleb visited every morning before sunrise, standing in the corner of the room while machines ticked and whirred. One morning, he brought a photo Mariella had drawn, her, Sophia, and their dad, smiling beneath a crooked sun. He taped it to the window. It took 4 more days for Luis to open his eyes. When he did, he panicked, pulling at tubes, disoriented, frantic. Caleb was there. The nurses backed away. Caleb approached slowly. "Your girls are safe," he said. "They're with someone I trust. They're okay." Luis looked at him, blinking through fog. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "You don't have to be," Caleb replied. "You've done enough. Now let me do something." Luis closed his eyes again, this time not from fear, but exhaustion. Back in Roscoe Village, the girls began to thaw. Sophia started drawing again, dragons and spaceships. Mariella started asking questions. "Where are we going to live? When will Dad come home? Are you adopting us?" Caleb never lied. "I don't know yet," he said, "but I'm not going anywhere." They didn't believe him at first, but they didn't disbelieve him either. That week, Tilda called him into the kitchen. "They need structure," she said. "Not just visits, not just reassurance. They need to feel like they're wanted, not temporarily tolerated." "I know. So do something about it." 2 days later, Caleb took a step he had never imagined. He invited the girls to stay with him. "Just for a while," he said. "Just until their dad got better." Tilda gave him a long look, then nodded. "I'll help you get the place ready." Caleb's penthouse wasn't meant for children, but by the end of the week, it had been transformed. The guest rooms became bunk beds and beanbags. The art studio was cleared to make space for coloring books and Lego bricks. The kitchen got step stools and sippy cups. The security guard at the front desk got strict instructions to smile and offer candy. The girls arrived with 2 duffel bags, a teddy bear, and a stuffed unicorn named Punch. Sophia wandered the space with wide eyes. Mariella went straight to the windows and looked out at the lake. "This is real?" she asked. "It is now," Caleb said. That night they ate spaghetti on the floor in front of a movie. Sophia fell asleep mid-sentence. Mariella curled up with her back against the wall, her face half hidden in the blanket. Caleb sat in the hallway long after they slept, unsure whether what he felt was joy or dread. He had built empires. But this felt like building something far more fragile. A home. The first night the girls stayed in Caleb's penthouse was not seamless. At 2:13 a.m., he woke to the sound of muffled crying. Not loud, controlled, like someone who had learned early to cry into a pillow. He found Mariella in the guest bathroom, sitting on the tiled floor with her arms around her knees. She didn't look up when he entered. "I didn't mean to wake you," she said. "You didn't," he lied. He sat on the edge of the tub. The silence between them stretched. It didn't need to be filled. "Sometimes," she said after a while, "we sleep in our coats, even when it's warm, just in case we have to go." Caleb nodded. Mariella looked up at him. "Do you know what it's like to pack everything important in under 10 minutes? "Yes," he said softly. She stared at him, eyes narrowing. "You're rich." "I wasn't always." Mariella's guard flickered for a moment, then rose again. "Rich people always say that. Doesn't make them less clueless." He didn't argue. "Can I ask something?" she said. "Anything. If our dad dies, do we go back to foster care?" The question hit like a brick to the throat. "No," Caleb said, and this time it was not a guess. "Not if I can help it." She nodded slowly, then whispered, "Okay." She returned to bed without another word. Caleb didn't sleep at all after that. The next morning, Sophia greeted him with a drawing, him, her, and Mariella inside a jagged-looking square labeled home. Above them floated a messy sun and something resembling a dog with wings. "This is Punch," she said. "He guards the window at night." Caleb hung it on his refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a kettlebell. Later that day, he met with his estate attorney and financial advisor. "I need guardianship paperwork," he said. "Temporary, maybe permanent." They looked at each other. "You sure?" the attorney asked. "No, but do it anyway." That evening, Mariella watched him from the kitchen doorway as he struggled with a blender full of green smoothie ingredients. She smirked when kale splattered across the backsplash. "You're not very good at this." "I'm exceptional at other things," he replied. "Like making poor girls feel awkward in glass castles?" He turned. "Do you feel awkward?" She shrugged. "Not as much." He offered her the cup. She took a sip, gagged dramatically, and laughed for the first time since she'd arrived. "Needs less swamp," she said. On the third night, Caleb received a call from the hospital. Luis Alvarez was conscious and asking for his daughters. Caleb didn't wait. He bundled the girls into his car and drove them across town through a quiet, snowy dusk. In the hospital room, Luis looked pale and small against the white linen, but his eyes lit up when he saw them. Sophia climbed straight into his arms. Mariella stood back. "You shouldn't have worked," she said. "You promised us." Luis's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry," he rasped. "We almost lost you." Caleb stepped back to give them space. His phone buzzed, but he ignored it. After a long silence, Luis looked at him. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to. I can't repay." Caleb shook his head. "This isn't about debts. Your girls saved you. I'm just helping them save themselves." Luis nodded. "Will you keep them? Just for a little while longer?" "As long as they need," Caleb said. The girls didn't hear this exchange. But that night when they got home, Mariella placed her sneakers neatly by the door for the first time. The days grew into weeks. The penthouse changed. Crayon drawings began replacing minimalist art. The guest bathroom smelled like bubblegum toothpaste. Caleb learned how to braid, and Sophia learned how to unlock his phone. He still worked, but less. He spent mornings making breakfast, burning toast more often than not, and evenings listening to stories about school or memories about their dad. Some nights Mariella still cried. Some nights Caleb stood outside their door, listening to the rhythm of their breathing, remembering his own mother's tiny apartment, how her sighs used to fill the walls like lullabies. One evening, while folding laundry on the kitchen counter, Caleb asked, "If you could change anything about your life, what would it be?" Sophia said, "I want a dog." Mariella said, "I want to stop waiting for things to fall apart." Caleb didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "Me too." The penthouse began to breathe. Not literally, of course, but something changed in its bones. The silence that once defined it, strategic, corporate, surgical, was now interrupted by laughter, coughing fits from juice gone down the wrong pipe, spilled cereal, and arguments over who got to hold the remote. It no longer echoed, it lived. Caleb found himself walking slower, listening more. He began keeping a notepad beside his bed, not for quarterly goals or tech specs, but for things the girls said. On one page, he'd scribbled, "If you say kale 3 times in a mirror, a salad appears and steals your joy." Mariella. He didn't remember writing it, but when he found it again, it made him laugh out loud. He hadn't done that, really laughed, in years. One morning he caught Sophia singing in the hallway. Just a little tune, soft and off-key. She stopped when she saw him, embarrassed. "I used to sing with my dad when we cleaned," she said, clutching her stuffed unicorn punch. "We called it dust karaoke." "Dust karaoke sounds incredible," Caleb said. She beamed. Meanwhile, Luis Alvarez was improving. Caleb had spared no expense. A private room, top-tier rehab, and a trauma-informed counselor who specialized in working-class patients. Luis was still fragile, both physically and emotionally, but every time Caleb visited, the man grew stronger. "I didn't realize how close I was to dying," he said once. "If it wasn't for the girls, and you, I would have just disappeared." "You didn't disappear," Caleb said. "You just became visible." Luis looked at him carefully. "You really want to keep them?" "I want what's best for them," Luis nodded. "Then maybe it's time to stop surviving and start building something. All of us." At home, things were building, slowly but surely. Caleb helped Sophia with science homework about the solar system, and she asked him if space was lonelier than being poor. He didn't know how to answer. Mariella started writing poetry. One night she slipped a folded page under his bedroom door. It read, "I used to count cracked tiles on the ceiling to know how far away I was from falling apart. Now I count breakfasts, and shoes by the door, and days that don't hurt." He kept the paper in his wallet beside a photo of his mother that hadn't moved in over a decade. One Friday evening, Caleb decided to cook. "I can't let you eat takeout forever," he declared. "Is that what you've been doing for 10 years? Mariella asked, suspicious. 12, he admitted. They picked a recipe, chicken tacos, and made a mess so spectacular it took 2 hours to clean. There was flour in the fridge, a spoon in the plant. Punch was wearing a tortilla as a hat. It was the best dinner they'd ever had. The next week, Caleb scheduled a meeting with his board of directors. He stood before them in jeans and a sweater, not his usual tailored armor. "I'm expanding the community branch of the Forge," he announced. He outlined a new initiative, the Alvarez Program, a social impact wing that would provide childcare, job training, counseling, and crisis support for the company's lowest-paid employees. "You'll bankrupt us," one exec scoffed. "No," Caleb said. "We've already been bankrupt. Morally, we're just now starting to fix it." The board pushed back, but Caleb didn't bend. He never had. Not for Wall Street, not for ego, and not for fear. 2 weeks later, blueprints were on the table. Architects drafted open spaces filled with light. Counselors signed on. Vendors were vetted. The first center would open in Englewood, where most of their cleaning staff lived. Caleb asked Mariella what she thought they should include. "Lockers with name," and she said, "so people don't feel replaceable." And Sophia said, "A snack shelf with real snacks, not health food lies." He wrote both ideas down. That night, he stepped into the girls' room and found them asleep in a makeshift fort built out of blankets and fairy lights. Mariella had a book still open beside her. Sophia clutched Punch like a battle shield. He didn't wake them, just watch for a while. He had lived in high-rise silence for so long, but now the walls pulsed with warmth, laughter, vulnerability, things he once thought dangerous. Weak. He was starting to believe that softness wasn't the opposite of strength. It was the evidence of it. Autumn swept in with a slow chill, casting golden light over the city. Caleb found himself savoring it. Those early hours before school runs, the girls arguing over whose turn it was to feed the turtle they'd named Grit. The quiet stretch of silence after breakfast when no one needed anything and everything felt intact. For the first time in years, Caleb wasn't planning an exit. He was present. That morning, Mariella sat at the kitchen table sketching a diagram for her science project, a machine that turned sadness into birds. She explained that it was powered by forgotten birthdays and broken shoelaces. Caleb said it sounded like a TED Talk waiting to happen. She grinned. Later that week, Luis Alvarez was discharged. Caleb and the girls picked him up from rehab. Luis was thinner, slower, But the light in his eyes was real. When he saw his daughters waiting by the entrance, both with their school backpacks and new shoes, he dropped his bag and hugged them as if they'd been gone for years. "You're taller," he whispered to Sophia. "You're alive," she replied. Caleb stood off to the side, hands in pockets, unsure where to stand in this reunion that didn't fully include him, but wasn't complete without him either. Luis walked over, his voice shaking. "I don't know how to say this, but thank you." Caleb nodded. "You don't have to say anything." "No, I do. You didn't just take care of my kids. You gave them back to me better than I left them." Luis stayed in a guest apartment Caleb arranged near the girls' school. Not too far, not too close. Just enough to make the transition gentle, and to make the choice mutual when the time came. That weekend, the four of them had dinner together, real family style, not formal. There was lasagna, spilled water. Sophia tried to teach Punch to sit at the table, and Mariella told a joke that made Caleb laugh hard enough to choke on garlic bread. Luis caught his eye across the table and smiled. "She's never laughed like that before." "Neither have I," Caleb admitted. "But change always brings questions." One rainy afternoon, Mariella lingered behind after school. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course. If my dad's okay now, are we going back?" Caleb looked at her carefully. "What do you want?" "I don't know," she said. "I love him. But here, I don't wait for the lights to shut off, or for footsteps outside the door. I don't pretend to be asleep when I'm hungry." She paused. "It's not that I don't want to be with him. I just don't want to go back to being afraid." Caleb knelt to her level, hands resting on his knees. "You don't have to choose between love and safety," he said. "You can have both." Tears welled in her eyes. "That's not how it works in the real world." "It is now," he said. A few days later, Luis called a meeting. Just him, Caleb, and Tilda. "I've thought about this," he said, his voice steady, "and I want to do what's best for them. Not for me. They love me. But they need you." Caleb swallowed hard. "You're a better father than you realize," he said. "I'm not giving them up," Luis replied. "I'm sharing them." Tilda drew up the paperwork, shared guardianship, joint decision-making. It wasn't common, but it was possible. And for them, it was right. That night, Sophia whispered to Caleb, "Does this mean you're officially half-dad?" He chuckled. "Only if you're okay with that." "I am," she said, "but you still can't braid." The Alvarez program launched the following month. The ribbon cutting was modest. Press, local officials, employees. But the heart of it was real. Childcare rooms painted with murals of trees and stars. Counseling spaces with warm lamps and soft chairs. Lockers with names etched into wood. A kitchen with an actual snack shelf. Mariella gave the opening speech. "I used to think strong people were the ones who didn't need help," she said. "Now I know they're the ones who aren't afraid to ask for it." Sophia added, "And also, snacks help." The crowd laughed. Caleb cried. But this time, not in secret. That evening, back at the penthouse, the girls helped Caleb hang a photo of the ribbon cutting above the fireplace. Luis stood beside them, holding the nails. No one spoke about what came next. There was no need. They were already living it. Winter arrived early that year. The kind of Chicago winter that scraped the sidewalks clean with wind and made every breath feel like borrowed glass. But inside Caleb's penthouse, there was warmth. Not from the radiant floors or automated fireplace, but from something gentler, harder to name. The girls had claimed the space fully now. Punch wore a new sweater every week. The fridge was plastered with glittery art. Grit the turtle had a Christmas cave built out of Legos and marshmallows. Caleb stopped noticing the mess. He started noticing the joy. One night, as snow fell in thick, silent curtains outside, Caleb stood on the balcony with Luis. They each held a mug of tea. Luis's hands still trembling slightly from nerve damage. "She's different now," Luis said, looking in through the glass at Mariella, who was teasing Sophia with a sock puppet. "They both are," Caleb agreed. Luis turned to him. "You think they'll remember this?" "Not everything, just the parts that mattered." Luis nodded. "You know, I used to pray someone would help me, and when no one did, I stopped praying." He took a sip of tea. "Then my daughters found you." Maybe that's an answer I didn't expect. Caleb didn't speak, but he didn't need to. The next day, Caleb received a letter, handwritten, from his estranged father's lawyer. It was about a trust, unclaimed, forgotten. He tossed it in the fire. Later that evening, he found Mariella curled up in the reading nook. "What's the scariest thing you've ever done?" she asked. "Let someone love me," he said. She blinked. "That's dumb." "Terrifying," he corrected. She laughed. At school, Sophia's teacher pulled Caleb aside. "She's flourishing," she said, "and she talks about you all the time." "What does she say?" "She calls you our backup, Dad, but better." Caleb smiled, his throat tight. He hadn't realized how fully they had made him theirs. The holidays came and went. No big gifts, just moments. Luis made tamales. Caleb tried and failed to build a gingerbread house. The girls wrapped socks in glitter paper and called them magic warmth bombs. On New Year's Eve, they all stayed up to watch the fireworks from the rooftop. At midnight, Mariella leaned against him and whispered, "I hope this year is slow." "Slow? I just don't want to miss it." In January, the Alvarez program expanded to 2 more centers, one in Southside, one in West Garfield Park. Caleb let Claire, one of the original counselors, take the lead. He stopped micromanaging. He started trusting. He had built a lot of things in his life, companies, properties, status, but nothing compared to this, a life with room for others, a home that breathed. Then came the moment he didn't expect. Luis knocked on his office door. "The girls want to stay here," he said. "With you, most of the time." Caleb's mouth went dry. "What do you want?" Luis exhaled. "I want to give them what I never had, a choice." So Caleb sat the girls down, heart racing. "You don't have to decide anything now," he said. "Whatever you need, I'll support it." Sophia reached for his hand. "Can we have 2 homes?" "Of course," Mariella nodded. "But this is the one with the turtle and the guy who burns toast. So, this one more." That night he sat alone in the living room, the soft hum of the city below. The quiet no longer threatened him. It held him, a quiet earned. Spring crept back into the city slowly, like a child returning after a long sulk. The snow thawed, giving way to puddles and the smell of new things growing. And in Caleb Mercer's world, things kept growing. Not just programs or outreach, but people. The girls were taller now. Sophia had a gap in her front teeth and an obsession with astronomy. She once told Caleb, "You're like gravity. You don't say much, but you keep everything from floating away." Mariella had joined the school's writing club. Her latest story was about a CEO who became a superhero, not because he could fly, but because he showed up when no one else did. Caleb framed it. One Thursday afternoon, they visited the first Alvarez Program Center together. The building was alive with sound, children, laughter, the thud of a ball against a gym floor, soft music from a therapy room down the hall. In the hallway, a young mother with tired eyes stopped Caleb. "You're Mr. Mercer, right?" she asked. He nodded. "I used to work 2 jobs and sleep on the train. My daughter got sick. I didn't think we'd make it. Then your program gave me a place to land, a place to fight back." She didn't cry. She just nodded and walked away holding her little girl's hand. Cal stood there for a long time after. Back home that night, Mariella asked him, "Do you miss the way it used to be? Before us?" He thought for a moment. "No," he said. "Back then, I was just existing. Now, I'm living." In May, Luis got a new job, night supervisor for building maintenance at the Alvarez Center. His health had stabilized. He still limped slightly, but his voice no longer carried the weight of apology, only pride. The girls spent weekends at his apartment, which now had a bookshelf, a rice cooker, and a dog named Bruno, who barked at his own reflection. On Sunday nights, they came back to the penthouse tired, happy, and with stories to tell. Caleb learned to stop worrying about the future. He just listened. Then came the storm. Not a metaphor, a real storm. Lightning split the sky open over Lake Michigan one evening, and the power flickered just after dinner. The girls shrieked with theatrical fear, racing to the living room with blankets and punch and a bag of popcorn. "Emergency fort," Mariella declared. Caleb helped string fairy lights around the couch. They all huddled together beneath blankets, telling ghost stories by flashlight. "Do you believe in magic?" Sophia asked him. "I believe in what people create when they care enough." She nodded solemnly. "That's the same thing." Weeks passed. School ended. The girls danced barefoot on the balcony the first day of summer break. Louis brought over a piñata shaped like a rocket ship. Caleb grilled hot dogs for the first time in his life. Mariella made a playlist. Sophia fell asleep halfway through the party, holding a popsicle stick and humming in her sleep. No cameras, no press. Just a family that had learned how to stay. One night, as he was tucking them in, Mariella asked, "You think this will last?" Caleb brushed a lock of hair from her forehead. "It already has." The final scene. It was a warm August afternoon when they opened the fourth Alvarez Center. This time there was no ribbon cutting, just an open door. A mother walked in holding a baby. A teenage boy asked for tutoring help. A grandmother signed up for health coaching. Caleb stood at the back watching. Mariella was helping with sign-ins. Sophia had become the self-appointed welcome tour guide. Luis was in a staff shirt, handing out name tags. And Caleb? He didn't speak. He didn't wave. He just smiled. It wasn't about him anymore. That was the point. Epilogue. Sometimes Caleb still wakes before sunrise. Old habits. But now when he walks past the guest room and sees tiny shoes by the door, or when he hears Sophia whispering to Punch about Jupiter, or when Mariella falls asleep with a pencil in her hand mid-sentence, he knows this is what healing sounds like. This is what home is. Not perfect, but chosen. 1. Compassion doesn't need to be loud. Just present Caleb began as a wealthy, isolated, emotionally detached man. But a small moment, seeing two little girls quietly cleaning in the early morning, awakened a long-buried part of his humanity. Lesson. Sometimes a quiet, simple act of kindness is powerful enough to change an entire life, or many lives. 2. Family isn't just about blood, it's about choosing to stay. The story isn't about rescuing children, it's about building a new family, one rooted in trust, love, in shared presence, not obligation. Lesson. Family is not just where you come from, it's where you're chosen to belong. 3. Healing is a journey, not a miracle. No one in this story was saved overnight. Caleb wasn't a hero. Luis wasn't replaced. Mariella and Sophia didn't bounce back instantly. But with patience, listening, and respect, they found healing together. Lesson. To truly help someone, walk beside them, not ahead of them. 4. Real success is using your power to lift others. Caleb had everything: money, power, influence. But it meant little until he used it to do good. Only then did life gain real meaning. Lesson. Wealth isn't what you keep, it's what you're willing to give. 5. Never underestimate the strength of the unseen Luis, the struggling single father. Mariella and Sophia, two seemingly powerless little girls. But they became the catalysts of change, sparking a movement in their name. Lesson. Those the world often ignores may hold the greatest strength and deserve to be heard the most. Final message. We don't save others. When we open our hearts to them, they often save us right back.